Hello guys, welcome here to another virtual science lesson. Today we're starting a new chapter that will be devoted to the environment that is surrounding us, which is basically everything that creates the world that we live in. And guys, this we will start with explaining what environment is, and as you can see in the topic of the lesson, there are a few components of this environment. So, to begin with, environment is the world that we live in. So basically, every single thing that surrounds us can be considered an element of our environment. And guys, basically, environment po polsku środowisko consists of two groups of components, of elements, biotic ones and abiotic ones. Po polsku to są elementy ożywione oraz elementy nieożywione. And guys, let's think for a moment what are the biotic and abiotic elements. So guys, biotic elements, which means that they are bio. You can see this bio prefix in this word. And to this group, we can count in elements such as plants, such as animals. We humans are counted into this group, animals, but also the organisms that we cannot see with a naked eye, which are bacteria, and also fungi. If it comes to viruses, then viruses are actually not biotic, nor there are abiotic, which means that there are somewhere in between of those groups. Up to this day, scientists basically cannot clearly decide to which group they belong to. And if it comes to abiotic elements of environment, then we have things like air. We also have water. We have, for instance, sunlight. And we also have rocks, skały. Environment always consists of those two elements because in order for life to develop, so this biotic part, it needs to have something to live in. So it needs to use elements from abiotic part of the environment. It needs water, it needs air. Plants need both water and sunlight in order to produce food for themselves, but they also need minerals which they obtain from water because water dissolves rocks, and from this source the minerals are present in water. And today we are going to talk about rocks. This is the topic of our lesson today. And guys, rocks basically can be found everywhere. Regardless of the place on Earth where you are, the ground that you're standing on is made of rocks. At some depth, there will be a layer of solid rocks. Even in the ocean, the bottom of the ocean is also made of rocks. So we can say that basically rocks build the earth, but not only they build earth, they are also used widely because used by humans, of course, because we live in houses, right? We drive our cars on roads. All of these elements are made of rocks. And guys, let's think about for a moment what rocks are. This is not the case where everywhere in the world, every single rock is made of the same thing, nor is it made of rock itself. Rocks are built of minerals. And here, let's focus on the word minerals. Minerals are basically chemical compounds. There are plenty of them, hundreds of them that are known to us, and they are made of chemical elements. Some of them can be pure chemical elements, but definitely most of them are made of chemical compounds, which means that a few elements bound together in order to create uh, a mineral. So we can say that mineral are chemical compounds, czyli związki chemiczne po polsku. Jeszcze raz wytłumaczę to, co przed chwilą powiedziałem tylko po polsku. Minerały są zbudowane ze związków chemicznych. Tak naprawdę związki chemiczne są minerałami. Niektóre z minerałów mogą być pojedynczymi pierwiastkami, natomiast większość z nich to są związki chemiczne, czyli kilka pierwiastków jest połączonych razem i w określonej proporcji i rodzaju tych pierwiastków tworzą konkretny minerał. And guys, rocks are built of minerals, and there are various minerals in the world, and there are three examples of them. One of the most common minerals that build rocks is quartz. Po polsku kwarc. It's a very stiff material, very difficult to break, and it's absolutely common. It can be found everywhere. It's made out of atoms of silica, krzem, and oxygen. And basically, we use it widely as well. We use it widely, for instance, to create glass. Another type of mineral that can be found widely in the environment is calcite. Kalcyt po polsku. And guys, basically this is a mineral that has different properties because it's much softer, it's much easier to break it. And there is an interesting thing. If you have a kettle in which you boil water for your tea, after some time of using it, you will find some kind of residue on the inner walls of this kettle, which is called the lime scale. And chemically looking at this residue is calcite as well. And another example of minerals built in rocks is a really beautiful mineral called mica, po polsku mika. This mineral is in a form of a very thin layers of a really shiny and beautiful mineral. This can be found easily because not only is it common, but also when sun is shining at certain types of rocks, you will see some beautiful shining spots. And basically, the shining spots, the reflective spots, are made of mica. Those are only three examples of minerals, but there are plenty of them, hundreds of them, and basically they build up the whole environment, the whole amount of rocks, sorry for this, of rocks around us. And guys, and now we know just a few examples of minerals that are built in rocks. So let's move on to looking at rocks themselves. And there are plenty of types of rocks. We can divide all the rocks that are present in the environment into three groups. First group are solid rocks, czyli skały lite. And guys, the first example that you see is a rock called granite. Po polsku granit. It's one of the toughest and stiffest rocks that are present in the environment. And as you can see, it's made of tiny bits of minerals. So here you can see some darker spots, here you can see some brighter spots, here you can see some white spots, uh, and unfortunately it's difficult to spot on a picture because you would have to move this rock in your hands in order to see it. But here, the brightest ones, those tiny bits, are basically built of mica. The rest is quartz and some other minerals. This rock is widely used in buildings because it's very resistant to weather, and also it can be found, for instance, in many kitchens as a tabletops because it has properties that make it very durable and very resistant to all the things that you can do in the kitchen. Another type of a solid rock is a rock made of sand that has been glued together. At some point, the layers of loose sand were found at a huge depth where it was compressed. The mass of the ground above the layer of sand was so high that it basically compressed all the grains of sand together and it created the sandstone. Po polsku piaskowiec. This is also a very durable material, so many buildings are lined with it. So the front walls of the buildings outside are lined with sheets of sandstone. It's very durable. It's very difficult to break it, very difficult to cut it, and it's going to last for years. It's mostly made of quartz. And another type of solid rock is a rock that is basically created at the bottom of the ocean millions of years ago, and when most of nowadays terrain of Poland was just a shallow and really warm sea. Many sea creatures used to live in it, but they lived for a while, then they died. But what they did is that they were building protective shells and some other forms of skeletons, which were made of calcite mostly, and once they died, they fell to the bottom of the ocean, where over time more and more of them were deposited. And after some time, the pressure was so high again that the shells and the remains of the animals were compressed into a solid rock called the limestone, czyli po polsku wapień. This mineral is really soft, so it won't be found um at elevations of buildings because basically it gets destroyed easily. It gets destroyed by rain. Water easily dissolves this rock, but it's used for decoration inside, and it's also used as a source of mineral called calcite, for instance, among others. What is really interesting about limestone is that it's usually is a really bright color with some reddish inclusions inside, which is basically rust, the same rust that you will find on a metal. Those are iron compounds that connected with oxygen when something was still alive. You can also see the remains of animals and also see the remains of their shells. So we can see some sea slugs in here and also some shells from clams. So guys, minerals such as quartz, calcite, and mica, they build granite, they build sandstone, they build limestone, but this is not the end. Those are only solid rocks, but there are some other kinds of rocks. This group is called the concise rocks, czyli po polsku skały zwięzłe. And guys, this grayish thing is clay. Po polsku glina. It's also a rock, but it has some plastic properties. So when you mix it with water, you can shape it into any shape you want. And then you heat it up in a furnace, then it dries out, and you have pottery. So all the pots, all the mugs, especially in the past, were made of clay. There is also another example of concise rock, which is this. I know that in the picture it looks solid, but if you touched it, you would see that whenever you touch it, it just leaves some dust on your hands because this rock called the les, po polsku les, is made of tiny, tiny bits of calcite and other minerals, and they also were compressed together over time and they created this rock. There are some places in Poland where they can be found and they create a steep, almost or almost vertical walls of less. But some of the rocks are not in their solid forms. Some of the rocks we can call the loose rocks. And The first example is gravel, czyli żwir. Gravel is basically the mix of various rocks that are in tiny pieces. So they were broken, they were mixed together. Usually they were carried by water, by river, from which they are just taken and used, for instance, in buildings. Or when you are building a train track, you need some gravel right beneath the train track. Another example, which might be surprising for you, which is a rock, but indeed it is classified as a rock, is sand, piasek. Basically, this is also a mix of various materials. In this case, it's mostly quartz, but it can be made of pretty much every single rock. So when gravel is being dragged by a river or is being carried in the ocean for long enough time, it will break into smaller and smaller pieces, eventually creating sand. Sand can be yellowish, can be reddish, can be black, can be white, can be almost transparent. Sand also doesn't necessarily have to be built out of rocks. Sand can be also made out of, for instance, tiny, tiny shells of ocean animals. So basically, this is a very wide group, and many different things can be accounted into, but it is a loose rock. And guys, we use those minerals on everyday basis in our everyday lives because we need them. So we can call them the mineral resources, czyli surowce mineralne. And here are a few examples of them. The first group that we might talk about are energetic resources, czyli surowce energetyczne. And to this group we can throw coal, węgiel, or petroleum, ropa naftowa. Coal and petroleum are basically the remains of organisms that used to live millions of years ago. Coal are the plant remains, and petroleum is supposed to be made of animal remains. Coal is used to warm up our houses, is used to create electricity, and petroleum is used to, for instance, create petrol for your car or for plane, but also many other things. All the plastic that is made is also made of petroleum compounds. So if we run out of petroleum, then we also run out of plastic. There is also another group of resources, which are metal resources, such as iron ore, ruda żelaza, or copper ore, ruda miedzi. I assume that you know what iron and copper is. Those are metals used in various things, but what is an ore, czyli ruda po polsku? Basically, those metals, they don't appear in the environment in their in their clear forms. They always connect to some other chemical elements and they create some other minerals, and minerals that contain pretty much of iron or copper or any other metal like silver or lead, they are called the ores. So you need to dig into the ground, take that mineral out, take that ore out, and then process it in order to take the things that you want from it. In this case, it's iron, in this case, it's copper, and basically you can get rid of the rest. There are also chemical resources, and in this group, we can talk about rock salt or sulfur. Rock salt is basically the table salt that you use to add to your food to make it saltier. Sulfur is a chemical element that is very characteristic. That is very characteristic because it's yellow and it smells when it's burned. In the past, we used to have mines for sulfur, just like we do right now. With coal. But right now in Poland, there is only one working sulfur mine. The rest of the sulfur we need, and we need plenty of them for medicine. We need plenty of it for some other chemical processes and basically industry. When we burn coal in our power plants, then basically the smoke that is coming out of the furnace is so rich in sulfur that there are some filters installed on the chimneys of the power plants in order to catch all the fumes and not only not to worse the air quality but also to obtain that sulfur back. So there are no longer many sulfur mines, but yes, indeed, this is also a, chemical resource. Also, guys, building resources. And building resources are, for instance, sand or limestone. But basically any other kind of rock, as I mentioned before as well. Sand is needed for cement to mix with cement in order to create concrete. So when you build a home, you have bricks which are made other minerals. Uh, then they have to be glued together with a concrete, and also when you build skyscrapers, you use a lot of iron and you use a lot of concrete. So this is all the mix of sand with some other minerals and chemicals obtained, for instance, from the limestone. And also jewelry. As many minerals are just beautiful, such as diamonds or agates. Google this. It's really beautiful. Diamonds actually are also very beautiful, and what is really interesting that diamond is indeed a mineral, but it's made out of a single chemical element, so it's pure carbon. So the thing that we call coal is made mostly out of carbon, but diamond is also another form of coal, which is clear and doesn't contain any other chemical elements. Okay, guys, so this is all for today. Please carefully read the instructions that were attached to the post with the lesson, and there is something waiting for you in the assessment section, so please check it out. Remember that the time to do this is limited, and basically not submitting the work will be considered as not be as being absent during the lesson. This is all for today. Thanks for attention and stay at home.